I made a video where I talked about a bunch of P Plate mods that I thought were not worth doing on NA Falcons, and that video caused a fair bit of controversy. You see, I've got this opinion that there's a whole bunch of companies and workshops that are basically selling snake oil to young guys who are new to cars, claiming that if you spend thousands of dollars with them, sometimes as much as $4 or $5 grand on intakes and exhausts, underdrive pulley kits and tunes, it'll be totally worth it for that little bump of power that you'll get on your NA Falcon. But I think this is just wrong. Because sure, maybe eventually after spending enough money and changing enough stuff, you might be able to gain 30 kilowatts on the dyno. Once you get side by side with a totally stock NA Falcon, that tiny little bit of extra power has just not been worth the thousands of dollars you've spent to have to get there. In fact, the amount of money that some of these workshops encourage NA Falcon owners to spend ends up being so much, you probably could have done a cheap NA Plus T build by the time you've finished. But since then, I've been flooded with comments and messages asking me what mods for NA Falcons are actually worth it then. And so in this video, I'm going to go over all the things I think you can do that are actually worth doing to an NA Falcon. This list is only going to be practical stuff, things that actually increase performance, things that might improve your satisfaction of the car overall and how much you enjoy it, and things that you can do at a cost that aren't going to completely outweigh the benefit you get. Like, for example, spending $4,000 on exhausts, intakes, and tunes, only to gain about 30 kilowatts. Check the vehicle modification laws in your state or territory. It's not my fault if you do something that turns out to be legal where I am, but illegal where you are. Authorized by FG Mods Brisbane. First up is suspension. The factory springs and shocks on the Falcon are soft and the ride height is probably something close to a monster truck. This is so that the car glides over the smooth, high-quality roads of Australia. Unfortunately, this can make driving around tight bends or at high speeds feel something like navigating the Atlantic Ocean during a massive storm in a Neo-Panamax container ship. Remember, these were made as family cars first and foremost. Comfort and reliability were the main things that Ford was focusing on when they made these cars. Whoa, reliability, I hear you say, but Josh, my broken diff bushes, my leaky shocks. Yeah, all of that stuff's happening because you're driving the car in a way it's not intended to be driven. Again, it's a family car, not a race car. That's why you've got to upgrade this stuff to be able to make it handle the way you want to drive it. This soft, sloppy suspension often leads cheeky, overconfident JDM boys to talk about how they'll beat you in the corners if they can't beat you in the straights. And I'm sure that's something that you don't want to let go. So to fix this problem, the first FG Mods approved P Plate mod for your NA Falcon is Coilovers. Replacing the overly soft factory shocks and springs makes the handling of the Falcon totally different. Instead of suffering through the feeling of rolling through the open seas, with stiffer suspension, you'll be able to feel more feedback through the car. And in doing tighter turns, you'll be able to feel it being more planted and able to handle higher speeds during those bends. Another advantage of coilovers, and often the reason P-platers want to get them, is because you can adjust the ride height of your vehicle. Lowering it lowers your center of gravity and makes the car feel more planted and able to handle tight corners better. But like I said in my video on P-plate mods to avoid, do not overly lower the car. You don't want unwanted police attention, and frankly, you want to be able to get in and out of the Macca's drive-thru. Also, what's the point of spending a bunch of money on parts that are supposed to make the handling of the car better and then just throwing all that out the window by lowering it so far to the ground that you've thrown off all the suspension geometry anyway? You put your CVs on such a bad angle it just wears them out and makes them break way quicker. All for what? So that you can scrape on every pebble on the road? It's crazy business. This is all stuff that I'm sure you've heard a lot of times before. The point is, coilovers actually make a tangible difference to handling if you use them correctly. Also, you can install them at home yourself. No need to pay somebody else to do it for you. And if you ever sell your car, you could choose to take them out and try and sell them secondhand to recoup a little bit of cost on that. Or if you buy another Falcon that takes the same suspension, you could just take them out and put them in the new one, pretty much saving yourself having to spend the money all over again on a new set of suspension. This is one of those things where the value of the part doesn't just end at having bought it and put it in the car. You've got options to sell it on or use it again in the future, which helps increase the cost benefit of getting this. A bonus item, while we're talking about suspension and handling and trying to make the car feel better on the road, there's something to be said for changing the sway bar to a heavier rated one to get that tighter road feel on turns and traction. However, if you do decide to go with a heavier sway bar, you'll need to reinforce the mounting points as well. it's very common for people to put a heavier sway bar in their Falcon and then actually crack the mounting points because there's a lot more tension than what they're made for from factory to be able to handle. But overall, this one doesn't cost much to do. And again, it's one you can do at home yourself to save some money, and it does make a tangible difference to the handling of the car. Next up, turbocharger. No, that's not legal. Wheels. This one is probably the most obvious on the list. Out of everything that you can do as a P-plater, there's nothing that shows your individuality and bad financial choices better than being just like thousands of other kids before you and spending as much money on wheels as you spent getting your car in the first place. But seriously, getting some cool wheels does make a lot of sense, because someday, even if you do sell the car, you can always just take the wheels off and put them on the new one. Obviously, if the stud pattern and fitment allows for that. Speaking of fitment, there's plenty of good options out there for Falcons. For example, if you want a factory but better kind of look, companies like CC Forged have both Flowform and forged wheels in the same styles as OEM wheels, but these things are made with perfect fitment straight out of the box. There's no need to roll guards or to use spacers, something that's illegal and you don't want to get caught with if you're on your Ps. These things can just go straight on the car and perfectly tuck straight out of the box because they've been made with fitment in mind. Also, their Flowform wheels are generally stronger and have higher ratings than factory wheels do, but they actually cost less than most of the factory wheels you're going to be able to get off of Facebook secondhand. Use code FGMODS at checkout for a discount. If you want a more skits Falcon Jap wheels look, there's plenty of options available on the market from both big names and rep brands alike, depending on your taste and your budget. The wheels and tyres you use aren't just all about looks either. They also have a big impact on performance. Wider tyres have a wider contact area with the road. This improves handling, it improves acceleration, it improves braking, and all of that pairs really well with changing the coilovers and improving suspension and increasing handling there. You're just adding on top of what you're already doing by improving your suspension. And then obviously tyres alone have so much going on that I can't possibly cover them in this video, depending on the compound that you've used, harder and softer, what the tread is like, how much surface area and contact area the tread has, what those compounds are like handling different temperatures and different types of driving. There's so much going on just with tyres. Trust me, it's worth spending the money getting decent tyres if your whole goal is to try and improve performance. Next up is LSD. No, not that kind. Come on, grow up. Keep up with me here. I'm talking about limited slip diffs. The purpose of open diffs is to improve turning efficiency, power distribution, be low cost and easy to maintain, at least according to manufacturers. The real purpose of an open diff is to make your driving experience worse, make the car feel terrible, give you poor performance, and then as soon as you try and do anything remotely fun, throw you off the road and send you straight into a tree. An LSD is the solution to this problem. An open diff sends more power to whatever wheel has the least traction, whereas an LSD has more even power distribution with a bias towards whichever wheel has the most traction. This gives the car better power to the ground, better handling, and it makes it more predictable, especially in situations where you're breaking traction. In my own experience, switching from an open to a limited slip diff made a massive difference on the wet pan practicing drifting. It turns out I don't just suck at getting sideways, my car was doing everything it could to stop me from having fun. As soon as the LSD went in, it became incredibly easy. There's a few different options you can go with when it comes to LSDs for Falcons, all the way from no-name torque lockers for NA diffs, all the way up to big turbo diff wave track LSDs. Whichever route you choose, the money is well worth being spent for the performance improvement that you get. If you're a P-plater who just wants better performance and doesn't want to do single pegger skids anymore, a no-name torque locker in the NA diff is probably going to get you by just fine. Or you could be like me and change the entire rear cradle to a turbo spec and put a high quality LSD in the M86 diff while you're at it. Whether it be a true track or a wave track, the money is well worth being spent, knowing that you can thrash that thing for the rest of its lifetime and it'll keep going no matter what. And the last thing on our list is kind of a catch-all for a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to call it cool. Anything that you want to do to make the car more yours, more cool to you. You want a boss bonnet? Cool, get one. Screw the XR8 guys who get all booty blasted over barra boys having hump bonnets on their Falcons. They look cool. They're so cool that even Commodore guys are trying to put hump bonnets on their Commodores. Starlights in the roof? Why the hell not? If you think it looks cool, then you may as well do it. A better sound system? Why not? Even some $80 speakers from Autobahn are going to be better than the paper ones from factory. None of these things improve performance, but that doesn't make them bad. It just means you have to weigh up if the money you're spending is really worth it to you. Also, is doing these things going to get you more unwanted police attention and canary stickers? By now, you're probably noticing a running theme with all of these mods that I'm saying are worth doing on an NA Falcon when you're on your Ps. Do they improve performance in a tangible way? The amount of performance that they give you, is it worth it for the amount of money you're spending? And can you sell the parts again secondhand if you ever sell the car? Or could you take those parts from one Falcon and put them on another if you've bought another Falcon to replace the NA one? For example, if you've got an NA FG and you plan to buy a turbo FG in the future, then why not spend the money on a Boss bonnet, on coilovers, on wheels, stars in the roof, whatever it is that you want to get? Because all that parts, you could just take them off and put them in the turbo one. There's no need to spend that money twice. You haven't lost anything by taking it off and putting it in the new car. In fact, you've brought all that personalization, all that personality, and the performance from the things like suspension and the better wheels over in to your Turbo Falcon as well. There's a number of companies and workshops who have a financial incentive to convince you, the NA Falcon owner, that it is worth spending thousands of dollars with them on parts, tuning, and labor in order to get an extra 20, 30, maybe 40 kilowatts of extra power out of your NA Falcon. Like any good salesman, they will basically say and do whatever it takes in order to convince you that the money spent is worth it for that tiny little bit of extra power. It doesn't matter to them whether you're actually getting a good deal or not. What matters is that you give them your money. And frankly, I'm kind of sick of seeing it. I saw a post on Facebook from one of these workshops who said that a customer spent over $4,000 with them and they got an extra 40 kilowatts. I'm working on a script right now for a budget NA Plus T build, and for about that much money, you could turbocharge an NA Falcon. And speaking of NA Plus T, if you've been around as long as I have, you'll have watched some of these workshops grow from one-man operations all the way up to multi-workshop spanning enterprises, and their attitude change over time as well, from NA Plus T is impossible to it's not worth doing to now some of them are almost exclusively posting NA Plus T builds that they're doing. And sure, it's just good business to change over time with whatever it is the customers want to do. That's just good business. That's how having a financially successful company works. But what I'm trying to point out here is that it is all about financial incentive. Not what's best for you, it's what's best for them. So the next time some workshop or some influencer online who has a financial incentive to convince you that spending money on NA builds is worth it, keep in the back of your mind, is it actually worth it to spend thousands of dollars for this marginal gain of power? Or is it just that they have a financial incentive to convince you to waste your money on this stuff instead of mods that are actually worth the money?